Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today we've got the pleasure of watching Remembering Johan from the North American server playing in their Object 268. And Remembering Johan, or hopefully Johan as I'm going to be calling them for the rest of this replay, is going to get an all-time damage record for this tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer. So the Object 268, it was the original tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer inside the game. For now you've got vehicles like the 263 that was originally tier 10, dropped down to tier 9 and replaced by the Object 268 version 4, which has kind of been the best tier 10 tank destroyer in the game, at least until recent, where Wargaming significantly nerfed that vehicle. So the 268 differs to the 268 version 4 very much so, and especially with regards to the alpha damage that this vehicle has. Now, while back in the day, the alpha damage on this vehicle was 850 before all of the tank destroyers were nerfed down to 750. That is still substantially higher than the 650 that you'll get on the Object 268 version 4. But on top of that, you are not only packing decent pen on your AP rounds like the Object 268 version 4 has with 303mm of pen, but you've also got fantastic heat at 395, and you've got wonderful HE rounds at 1100 alpha with 90mm of pen. Now, for some reason, the Object 268 gets some of the worst statistics inside the game. However, whenever I've played this vehicle, I can somehow make it work. Maybe because I have the same kind of playstyle as Johan here. I'm aggressive, I go in, I try and trade, use the vehicle's armor, at least occasionally it's going to be able to work. And when it does, you seem to just club out some big damage games. And then, when I've either lost a few hit points or alternatively, hopefully haven't, then I'll kind of drop back and play that supporting fire. Or alternatively, do it the other way around. Start off by playing supporting fire and then take it to the enemy team later on in the battle by using the vehicle's hopefully remaining hit points and also its great mobility. This tank's top speed limit is 48, but if you're so inclined, you can actually further increase the top speed limit of this tank by an additional 4 kilometers an hour. Now, it will cost you 2% reload penalty on this vehicle, but then that will allow you to go at like 52 kilometers an hour without a turbo on this tank, and if you do elect to use one, you're getting close to kind of like 60 kilometers an hour with a 750 alpha damage gun. And when you're playing against those tier 8s and the tier 9s, yeah, it's pretty darn decent. So an interesting shell there against the top of the Conqueror. I believe the top of the Conqueror it's like a 50.8mm plate, and so while I don't think that the Object 268 can manage to penetrate it as it is using 152mm, there's a really weird interaction with the gun of the 60TP on the top of the Conqueror and the Super Conqueror, that even though the top of the plate is 50.8 and the 60TP's gun I think is like it's 152.4 to be exact, there seems to be some kind of a rounding issue, and a 60TP can overmatch that plate, but this 0.4mm less on the 268 doesn't actually manage to overmatch that with AP. But again, with high explosive anti-tank rounds with 395mm of pen, they can go into surfaces that are angled up to 85 degrees, which is just absolutely ludicrous. So, Johan so far in this game has managed to pick up 4,286 damage while getting a little bit of assistance and still has the majority of their hit points left. Now, playing on this newly revamped airfield map, Johan is going to show you that you can also manage to use this central platform. And while this platform is very different back in the day, where previously I felt like it had a much cleaner avenue at shooting the center, now it's at least a little bit better at dealing with vehicles that are directly below, as we're going to be seeing in a second with a little bit of spoilers. So whenever I've played the Object 268, I've always really questioned whether we needed to have something like the 268 version 4 inside the game, and I'm thankful that Wargaming have nerfed that tank. The 268 for me was always very good, but for some reason the entire playbase just don't seem to make it work. I think that's because while it has a really good gun, it's not exactly the most exciting gun. It's not like a Jagdpanzer 100 where you're hitting for 1,050. It's not like an FV4005 or an FV215B183 that you're hitting for 1,150 with the AP and 1,750 with the HE, if of course you managed to pen them. Now, when you're playing an E3, you've got like super amounts of frontal armor. When you're playing an E4, where you've got a semi-traversable turret, which provides you with extreme flexibility. When you're playing an STRV-103B, you've got one of the highest damage per minutes of the game, and you've got the most accurate accurate gun in the game, although it does probably get less accurate than the Griller when you do set the vehicle up correctly and improve the vehicle's rate of fire at the expense of the 5% accuracy. So you've got all of these other tank destroyers. Like the Foch B has an autoloader, and the Foch 155 has the same gun as this, but has an autoloading function of it. So you've got all of these other tank destroyers that have, like, best-in-class features. Think about the Minotauro now. Gun depression, armor, autoloader, everything. There are no real other tank destroyers. And they're like, oh, sorry, I digress, but like the Griller as well. Super accurate gun, 750, great mobility, and a semi-traversable turret. I think the reason why the Object 268 doesn't do well even, is because it just doesn't get the respect that it deserves. It doesn't have any one individual aspect that's great. It's as if you've taken all of the sliders and put them up to like a 7. And for that, because there's no 10 out of 10 features, I don't think that there are very good players playing this tank, because it's not exciting in any individual regard. And I think if anyone was to say this vehicle was overpowered or best in class, they would be fibbing. Talk about incredible feats. It looks like that Johan here is going for TD15 for the Object 260, so good luck with that. They're also going for the moment of glory to try and improve it, where they've got to try and get the Top Gun award. So lots of hope for Johan here to get 6 kills. So to be able to do TD15 Triumph with honors, they need 8,000 damage to destroy 6 enemy vehicles and to win the battle by destroying all of the enemy tanks or capping the base. So I hope all of you out there are cheering on Johan. Although I'm not sure if really your cheers are going to actually help them perform in a replay that was probably a few days or a week after you're going to be making those comments and publishing this video. Boo! Here's QB. What are you doing? What are you doing? Ruining the magic of YouTube. I don't know. Bah humbug. You know, it's too early to be the Grinch. Oh God, did I mention Christmas? It's not even the end of October yet. Ah! Bad Quacky Babs. If I hear any Christmas songs before December, I'm flicking off the radio. Even I don't listen to radio. Who listens to radio these days unless you're in a car, I guess? If you're in a car? Oh God, now I'm alienating more of my audience. There's going to be like a diehard fan in the comments down below, a radio fan who's like, QB, every Saturday evening I turn on the radio and play World of Tanks. I'm sorry, I digress. Anyway, I think I'm covering well here for what is a dip in the game. But things are starting to heat up. We're halfway through the battle, and you get that kind of halfway through the battle itch, you know, where everybody starts wanting to play a little bit more aggressively. And Johan says, ha ha ha, enough of your shenanigans, AMX 65T. You can go back to camping for the rest of the battle and nursing your 10% remaining hit points. This thing certainly is punishing. And I guess I've explained why I don't think that it has the best players playing it. It's just got everything reasonably well. And I think it makes it kind of like a medium tank within that regard in World of Tanks that just doesn't have a turret but has a big old stonking gun. So I want to make a brief mention to Johan's equipment choice here as he finishes off the STRV-103B. They're using aiming device, gun rammer, and an unupgraded coated optics that if they had the 3,000 credits would be 2.5% better view range, although it doesn't look like it's going to stop them from spotting, but oh, missing the T-54. It's an interesting choice to put an aiming device on this vehicle, considering that the tank already has very good accuracy at .33. I personally, you know, being a stickler for vents, would definitely rather have vents on this vehicle, because the vents would be giving me 3% accuracy. Sure, they wouldn't be giving me quite like the 7% that this aiming device is, but they'd also be doing 3% to everything else. My ground resistances, my accuracy, not my accuracy, sorry. Well, they'd be doing the accuracy, but 3% accuracy, but obviously it's going to be 4% less than if you were to use the aiming device. But you'd also be able to get 3% to the view range of this vehicle, which starts to make it so that you can have a second build where you don't need the coated optics at all, but instead invest into something like a rotation device so that you can be able to have better gun handling, because this vehicle's gun handling on the move is very poor. But the actual turret traverse dispersion on this vehicle is excellent at 0.08. You definitely don't need to improve that. But if you do decide to take your 268 out on the battlefield after seeing Johan's amazing gameplay here, I would recommend smooth ride definitely on this vehicle. Talk about smooth ride. Johan is smoothly navigating this ridgeline, putting a second round down into the Chinese rocket tank down below. Also bouncing the Progetto, and this is where this vehicle's armor comes into handy, as they've blocked nearly 2,000 damage, enough to kill this vehicle one time over. Johan turns the vehicle around and quickly snaps a shot into the Progetto 46, removing pretty much half the hit points off the tier 9 Italian autoloading medium tank. The Progetto looks a little bit confused, dazed, as the rapid fire on this vehicle removes the other half before they're able to react and get themselves either behind a rock or re-stealth themselves. And just like that, with this absolute monster addition of the 4 additional shots, 5 including the STRV, Johan is now up to 10,800 damage. But unfortunately, you're seeing that this tank's 5 degrees of gun depression has to be one of the vehicle's worst aspects. Luckily, Malachik in the SU-130 PM puts a round into the BZ-68, finishing them off to stop them from being able to flank Johan. But Johan fails a shot there with the gun depression of the tank against the Object 140. And now with 4 minutes left on this game, things are starting to get tense, and you can't really afford to miss too many shots. The 140 is going to require at least 2, if not 3 shells. The MX-1390 is a one-shot, who's called Dr. Doom on the enemy team, a very imposing name. Let's see if Johan is going to be able to prove to be their demise. But how can you deal Doom a demise? Well, I'll have to see whether that's going to be the case. Also, there's an SU-130 PM on the enemy team, who has 1,100 hit points, I believe, which very conveniently is exactly the same amount of damage that these high explosive shells will do on the Object 268. So Johan is quite rightly using the fact that their sixth sense is going off to mark the map to let the team know where the AMX-1390 is. Now Johan is going to beg the SU on their team, who's on full hit points, to ask if they could go there. And considering we've got 3 minutes left on this battle, it would be good if Johan's team was able to help him out. So I like the way that Johan is using the Sixth Sense here. Do you notice that when Johan went round the first corner and went here, the Sixth Sense didn't go off? So that means they've managed to figure out exactly which bush the AMX-1390 has been poking in. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like Doc Doom on the enemy team is that much of a sucker, and they've been pulling back behind the rock when they do see that they are getting spotted, or that they are spotting the 268 and then clearly reacting within that 3 seconds window for the Sixth Sense to go off and pulling back around the corner. That's what you should do in a light tank. As soon as a vehicle comes out around the corner, you should be getting that feeling inside that they're going to fire 3 seconds later, roughly, after the Sixth Sense goes off. And it happens if you come out round a let's say someone's pre-aimed at your bush, and you come out into the bush, you should expect that they're going to fire 3 seconds after you spot them because of Sixth Sense. Oh, wow. So unfortunately, Johan doesn't have the high explosive round loaded there. I would have personally done an intuition switch to load the HE there to have a chance of the 50-50 against the SU, because intuition switching for 2 to 3 seconds, the SU wasn't going to escape, but having the extra 2 to 3 seconds to have a 50% chance of destroying them in a single shell and then surviving the subsequent assault, I think it would have been worth it. So interestingly enough, Johan is going to leave the SU-130 PM that they've just recently crippled and instead make their way towards the Object 140. But I like this play. The 140 is a tank that could possibly be able to deal with all of the TDs on Johan's team, and by focusing the 140, who hopefully they're going to be able to destroy in a couple of shells, it will allow them to be able to start to get a big stranglehold on this game. So unfortunately, Johan gets penned by the high explosive anti-tank round on the SU-130 PM, now reducing the hit points to 156 and putting their damage total up to just under 12,000. But that is going to be not quite 12,000 for any longer. Johan high rolls, but not high enough to be able to destroy the Object 140 in a single shot. And now the 140 is locked in mortal combat with 2 tank destroyers. The FE405 misses, so Johan needs to get stuck in and hopefully hit this 140 for hard enough to be able to destroy them in a single shot. But unfortunately, Johan is actually going to low roll there for 725 damage. And oh, no. No, not like this. The 1390 that was in those bushes above continues to haunt Johan. Can you honestly believe that neither of those 2 tank destroyers were able to penetrate the Object 140, which now means that it's just an SU-130 PM, albeit on full hit points, against the couple of remaining tanks. But it's so darn depressing to see that the SU-130PM is running away with only 5 seconds left on the game instead of taking the chance to win against the two very low health vehicles. And I'm Johan has to suffer a draw with 13,400 damage. That is an insane amount of damage for any vehicle, let alone one that the community just seems to ignore as not worthy of their attention. So what an absolute tragic heartbreak here for remembering Johan. I don't think anything more could be expected from a tank destroyer in World of Tanks. They were up in the face of the heavy tanks at the beginning and the STR-V103B, forcing them back, trying to win the early locations, then fell back into an amazing sniper nest to be able to hold back what felt like most of the enemy team. But unfortunately, it was the rogue 1390 who wasn't a sucker in the bush to the blind fires that was the anti-hero in this game of World of Tanks. And I just absolutely pained to see that even though this was an all-time damage record for the Object 268, that it wasn't quite enough. So remembering Johan unsurprisingly gets a high caliber here for the highest damage game of all time in the Object 268. 13,448 damage for 4 kills. This was an ace tanker, as this would have been about 1,450 base if you were also factoring in courageous resistance. And Johan also gets the Confederate medal for damaging at least 6 opponents that were subsequently killed by their allies. And they still just about managed to break even after firing all of their armor-piercing rounds and being forced to spam the heat. So, remembering Johan, thank you so much for representing the NA server today and uploading your incredible game to the What Replays website. And thank you very much for putting QuickyBaby in the title of your upload, so I know that you want to be featured today. And just to clarify, if any of you out there have incredible games, let me clarify, incredible games, feel free to put QB or QuickyBaby in your What Replay uploads if you want to have my terrible commentary on your epic games. And I hope all of you out there enjoyed this video today. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the Object 268. Do you think it's awful, terrible? Do you think it's great? Do you think it's amazing? Or do you think it's just okay? And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Monday, I'm going to be going live all day with new Twitch drop tokens. So come along on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby, get some fat loot, and we'll see if we can have a few spicy rounds. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.